I have watched many movies in my life, and to this day, I don't know if one has shot up so fast on my all-time favorite list than the one that we are talking about here today. I also don't know if there's ever been a movie that has made me cry harder than I have before. That movie that we are talking about today is Godzilla Minus One. I have finally watched it for the first time after it came out last year in 2023. It broke me in more ways than one that make it now, as I said already, one of my favorite films of all time. There are many other great things it does, of which we'll discuss in this film analysis. If you are new here, welcome to my channel, Film Obsessed. If you are someone who has seen Godzilla Minus One already and loved it like I did, give this video a like and subscribe and join the film community that I'm trying to build on this channel. Sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and let's jump right into it. The title of this video does not lie to you, because Godzilla Minus One did truly break me. I've only ever cried to a handful of movies and television shows in my life, and Godzilla Minus One absolutely deserves to be added to that list. The emotional impact this movie leaves on you, the watcher, is something only so many movies have had the ability to do and have done in the past with regards to the rest of cinema history. This comes down to the fact that most, if not all, of the filmmaking aspects of this film were done with such care and passion, but also so correctly that is why I was able to experience those feelings and emotions that I did. Everything is just Oscar level good, and we'll have a conversation about that later with regards to the Oscars. Takashi Yamazaki's directing is superb. I've always looked at it that the director's main job is to put scenes together to their vision of the story, but at the same time, really, their actual main job is to make sure that the actors are amplifying the scenes to an even greater extent to sell the emotional impact of the story they are telling. Everything else around that will complement them, as it sees fit to do so. The general idea of the story for this movie is that it takes place post-World War II in Japan, as they are trying to recover from their losses. Godzilla just happens to be a secondary note in that story. It is a movie that really is meant to focus on the human characters, while having Godzilla as a background piece that complements them. The actors in this film are all selling that so well, including our main star, who plays the character Shikishima. He is our protagonist, and the one that gets the most screen time, and the one who is representative of most of the themes this film tackles. I thought he was excellent, and maybe one of the better performances I saw all year for 2023 films. Yamazaki directs him expertly, and you can just feel the pain, horror, and the loss he suffers. The horror aspect mainly comes from his ability to take in Godzilla and the destruction that he is causing to him, but also Japan around him. The loss comes from the many people who Shikishima loses around him, and then the pain comes from his ability to not understand the decisions he has made that defined the kind of person that he is. It can be from when he decided to not kamikaze into the American ships at the beginning of the movie and disrespect his honor in the Japanese military by lying about his plane being damaged. It can come from the girl Noriko that he meets and befriends with the child Akiko that she's caring for, but doesn't decide to fall in love with her. And finally, it can also come from the thing he can't control, which is the PTSD of both of those instances that he experiences throughout the whole movie. It is truly some of the most incredible character work I have seen in a film ever. Hats off to the actor, and then again to the director Yamazaki for directing him so expertly. The character of Noriko, as I just mentioned, also was fantastic and very well played by the actress Minami Hamabe. When she pushed Shikishima out of the way of Godzilla's fire breath explosion in the city, to the arguments they had at times, to even the ending of the movie, was what got me the worst. As Shikishima is about to kamikaze into Godzilla's mouth and she appears on screen for a few seconds, I started bawling my eyes out, and I then went on to lose it the most in the sequence that followed that, when Shikishima gets word she is still alive at a hospital and he shows up in the room with Akiko in his arms. Such amazing storytelling, and again, amazingly directed by Yamazaki. And again, that's not all that this movie does extremely well from a filmmaking perspective. The budget for this movie needs to be studied in film classes, because they compressed it so insanely well that sometimes it blows my mind that I'm even able to see the budget on screen with the actual number that it is, which is around $10 to $15 million. I've seen just a few behind the scenes features for the movie, and the amount of visual effects layered throughout is actually actually insane. Visual effects is not cheap either, and so it blows my mind even more how well they were able to make it look. It's some of the best on-screen, small-budget CGI I have ever seen. It is used properly in the right places, but also in the places that help to effectively communicate the story and the characters. Godzilla, even if moving in a much stiffer form than other Godzillas I've seen before, is designed so horrifyingly that when he's able to use his atomic breath in the moments he does, it sent chills down my body. My mouth was wide open every time he used it because it was just that effective. I mentioned the budget already, but when we talk about the effectiveness of what makes a good budget, this movie exemplifies that to great lengths. You can clearly tell that the budget went towards the storytelling, but also the characters and their development. The spectacle nature of the action scenes and when Godzilla is on screen came second. Of course, I know that there is a caveat to how the budget was organized given that this is a Japanese-made film, but the point still stands. You know where the budget is going no matter the semantics of who was making this movie in the first place. Even to some of the other smaller areas of the filmmaking process with regards to the music, the cinematography of Japan that creates an amazing atmosphere, but then also the dialogue of the film's script, it's just created out of such a beautiful passion for the art of storytelling and the love the filmmakers have for a character like Godzilla. That almost in a way is a good segue over to the next part of the film analysis, which is to break down those themes, because if you've seen the movie already, or if you are a Godzilla hardcore fan, you'll probably recognize that this movie is a love letter to the original. Godzilla Minus One went back to the roots of what made something like the original 1954 film so iconic and instrumental in the kind of story it was telling. One of the big reasons why the original was made was because it represented an allegory and commentary of the real world. Godzilla is a commentary on post-war Japan, but was a clear embodiment of Japanese fears about nuclear weapons in the wake of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Of course, again, with the release of that film in 1954, it took place many years after those bombings, and so the filmmakers at the time used that as a way to create the very character that the world knows so well to this day. That makes the original maybe one of the most important films ever made. I've seen a lot of people discuss this in certain reactions of the film online, with when they say that while Godzilla Minus One might be the best overall Godzilla film, it is not exactly the most important one. I would argue that Godzilla Minus One only amplifies that conversation to the next level with those themes of what the original was trying to do, and they are very present here in Minus One. Our main protagonist is a heavy representation of that post-war allegory of when Japan recognized their loss of the war and the suffering it brought to their nation, followed by the rebuilding of that nation, and then the devastation that Godzilla is causing is the allegory of the nuclear part of why Godzilla was made. The country of Japan suffered greatly from the war, and now they had to fight again against a potentially even bigger force. I also love that the crew Shikishima becomes friends with in their mine-sweeping job help to represent that rise up against Godzilla. The citizens of that city, including Shikishima's friends, had to work together to fight the monster without the help of the Japanese government, which makes it even more sad and epic knowing that they were able to take him down in the end. It is an even crazier thought in mind when, if you think hard enough about it, if those two bombs were never dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, we may never have seen the character of Godzilla be created. Godzilla was definitely important for the time it came out back in the 50s, but I can say it as well that it is even more important to this day too. The very topic of the conversation about nuclear weapons is ever growing now with how many nations around the world are having political unrest and the fear that some have in themselves to think that maybe one of those weapons might get used if the world pulls itself apart even more. It's crazy to think that even a movie like Oppenheimer, which came out in the same year as Godzilla Minus One, with the themes of the same idea of what it means to live in a world where nuclear weapons exist. At the end of the day, you can say that Godzilla Minus One has a great story and all, but deep down there are much bigger things that it communicates that only add to why people loved it as much as they did and consider its importance to many things in life. The final thing I want to discuss in this analysis is the ending, because the director Takashi Yamazaki has discussed that he would love to do another one, and I think if you've seen the movie already, you know that that is something teased at the end to the possibility of another movie that could come. After our characters come to kill Godzilla at the end and blow him up, even that was apparently not enough, as we see that there is a scene showing that even in his destroyed state, his body was still able to heal from his wounds as it looks like he is regenerating back to his original form. As usual, Godzilla truly can never die, no matter what movie he's in, and it seems like he could return again, and I'll be very curious to see how that does play out. On another note, to add to that, we get another tease featuring the character of Noriko, who I add in no possible way was able to survive that that explosion earlier in the film that Godzilla created in the city. I have a few minor nitpicks with the movie, and this is one of them. There are several times where the plot goes into matter-of-fact territory, and you kind of have to suspend your disbelief, and her surviving that explosion was one of those instances. We see in the moment where Shikishima and Akiko go to see her in the hospital that she's got something growing on her neck, and what that is, I don't think anybody has been able to crack down exactly, at least as far as what I've been able to read into. I'm somebody who doesn't know the lore of Godzilla at all, and so I assume this will definitely factor into something massive happening in another sequel, but that could explain how she also survived. I'm not really sure at the end of the day, but if we do eventually get another sequel, I will be there day one to see it in theaters. That is also one of my biggest regrets after seeing the movie for the first time, that I wish I had seen it in a theater, and I will never let myself down for that. I did say I was going to mention it, but this movie being snubbed as much as it was at the Oscars last year was a tragedy. I'm glad it won for visual effects, but in every possible way, it should have been nominated for Best Foreign Film and Best Picture. I'm not sure what the Oscars were doing there, but there is nothing we can do about it now, and in my mind, it was one of 2023's best, and one of my now favorite films of all time. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my film analysis for Godzilla Minus One. Leave your comments down below about what you thought about my commentary and what your thoughts are of the movie itself. If you want to see more moving forward from me on this channel with regards to film and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and also subscribe if you are new here and turn on that notification bell. That's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you soon for the next video.